Reagan is a 2024 biopic about the 40th president of the United States, Ronald Reagan. It stars Dennis Quaid and was directed by Sean McNamara. Now, I will say before I get into this review that I do like films about presidents. I'm not going to get into specifics about everything, but when I was younger, Oliver Stone, I was a huge fan of his, like 15 years old, and I watched JFK and I loved it, and then I just got into a binge watching all of Oliver Stone's films. I really thought highly of him because he's a writer-director. So I watched all of his stuff. So JFK, I liked it, didn't like Nixon that much. I thought the performances were great, didn't like the structure, and now as an adult looking back, seeing that we've probably been propagandized about his presidency because he was actually a really good president until the scandal. W, didn't like that movie, but not because of anything, because I lived through it and I didn't care about George W. Bush. One film about presidents I love, besides JFK, I think it's just Kennedy films, is 13 Days. That movie is fantastic. It's about the Cuban Missile Crisis. If you haven't seen it, Kennedy is like the most we know everything almost about him as president, besides who actually, what organization actually, pulled the trigger. But we know a lot, and we knew he was involved in a lot. We know his family was involved in a lot. His father was a bootlegger, dealt with the mafia. The mafia helped get him elected. Then he appoints his brother Bobby to be the DOJ, the head of the DOJ, Department of Justice, and he goes after the mafia. And the mafia's like, what the hell? So there's a connection there why they might be involved in this. But anyway, this movie has nothing to do with that. It's about the Cuban Missile Crisis and what they had to do to get out of that, and how he was mad at the CIA for the Bay of Pigs incident, and how it all led to, this is a great film. I love this film. So we know more about Kennedy more than any other president in the 60s. It's phenomenal. It's crazy the fact that actually our government might have been responsible for that. And they used the patsy as Lee Harvey Oswald, but he might have actually pulled the trigger too. We don't know. But anyway, there's now this video of a Secret Service agent that pulled the gun. Bro, this is conspiracy galore in this and that. That's why it's interesting. But anyway, I know nothing about Reagan. So going into this, I knew nothing besides I was born during this time and that Reagan fixed the economy from after Jimmy Carter, and he won re-election in a landslide. He won states that Republicans never won before, or flipped states that Republicans never flipped before, I think. And then I don't think they've gotten it since. So I was like, that's all I know about this guy. And that he was an actor because of Back to the Future. Ronald Reagan, the actor? So that's all I knew. So going into this movie, I'm just going to get to because it's just a biopic, and it's told through the point of view of John Voight, who's a former KGB agent, who's being asked questions about why did the Soviet Union fall. And he was the one that was responsible to watch celebrities in Hollywood and who might be a threat to them, I guess, or who they'd be able to infiltrate or whatever. I don't remember the exact reasoning why he was involved in this, but they had agents that were responsible to watch celebrities. And Reagan hated communism since he was a kid because a communist refugee came to his church and told him about the horrors and everything that he dealt with in the Soviet Union. So Reagan just despised communism. I had no idea that before he was governor, he was the head of SAG, and that in that time period, he was actually an FBI informant, that he would out communists, that sympathizers or communists in Hollywood. I was like, this is interesting. I didn't know anything about this. I will say some of the stuff they get into in his past was like, we don't need to know. Like, oh, he was a lifeguard, but they used that at the end. Oh, because he's a lifeguard, he always has to save everybody. And that the structure, telling it through the eyes of Voight, or through the lens of Voight, it's not terrible, but it kind of gets like, why do we keep it? We don't need to keep going back to John Voight talking about this because it constantly cuts back to John Voight. I didn't like it. They could have just opened it with it and closed with it, but they constantly go back to John Voight and his interactions or monitoring Reagan, that he was telling the people in the Soviet Union about Reagan, that he's a threat, and everyone laughed at him and didn't believe him, and that Reagan would end up becoming president later on, and one of the best speakers, one of the most quick-witted speakers in debates and speeches, and that he was single-handedly the reason why the Soviet Union fell. And that was interesting too, because besides the Berlin Wall falling and being torn down, and him saying that infamous line, Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall. I knew nothing about any of this. So That's what they didn't teach you that in history. You had to go do afterwards. History was all about garbage. Just past the Regents exam, so it was like okay. But it was very. This is a very interesting film. I think I really enjoyed it. I think it does go too much into the whole his whole life, way too much. It's 2.5 hours long, and it goes way too much into his everything, every single thing. Even the fact that he was a little kid, that his mom told him that he had to stand up to bullies because if you don't, they're gonna keep following you. Which is something all kids when I was that age. I don't know if my parents heard it from him, but I remember when I was getting picked on in the school bus when I was in kindergarten. My dad told me do this and do that, and then I went when it was me and this girl. We took the bus together all the time, and these kids would just beat us up. So the next day, I remember going on the bus, and the girl says, "My mom told me to do this," and I was like, "Oh, my dad told me to do this." So when they said they said something like they were going to pick on us, and the first thing I did was I had an umbrella, so it was wrapped around my hand. I just swung it and hit the kid in the face, and this little girl just jumped on the other kid and started scratching his face, and you just heard screaming the entire time. And the bus driver was like, "Hey, what's going?" But the bus driver didn't care because the last time, the day before, we left the bus crying. So this time we let them leave the bus crying, and that was it. They never bothered us again. So that was just a funny thing. I just recollect that because his mom tells him to fight these bullies, and he actually does it. And I didn't know he was married before. And like I said, I didn't know anything about Reagan. So this movie in general, let me just say, like, it was long. Maybe, actually, I can't even say it was too long because it was interesting throughout the entire thing, to be quite honest. And I will say Dennis Quaid's performance is phenomenal. It was bizarre. He does it so well. The voice, his lip, everything. It's really, really great. What a life Reagan actually had when you think about it. Everything he did, and then he becomes president of the United States at a later age than he wanted to. I didn't even know he ran before, but so it's twice, I think, or once before. I don't know. I think against Ford, and then he beat Carter. But really, really great movie. Actually, was it? I don't remember. I think he might have went against. Look, he challenged for it. Look, all in all I know is the performance was phenomenal. The acting was great. The woman that played his wife, I forgot her name. I've seen her in Nancy Reagan. Penelope Ann Miller. She's in Carlito's Way. Yeah, so the woman that played his wife is Penelope Ann Miller. I know her from Carlito's Way. I don't know if she's done anything since Carlito's Way, but probably she's an actress, so she has to be working still. But she was in this, and she's great as Nancy Reagan. I will say at times there's just like a little issues. You know, I did think they hired like every conservative they could find. It is a except that Scott Bale's not in this, but it is a independent movie. And they hired like John Voight. I think I saw Robert Davi in the beginning. He played Russian. Yeah, and a few others that I know. Oh, Kevin Sorbo, that's who it is. Hercules is in here too as a pastor. I was like, oh no, this is getting like a Hallmark movie. If I see Kirk Cameron, I'm going to leave the film. But no, it was a good movie. I will say one of the main problems I have is not the time, and not the cinematography. Maybe the cinema. It doesn't feel like a film about president. Like, I guess it's the style. It's the shot. I don't know. There's something missing. Like, I don't know. I think I'm so used to Oliver Stone's directing, you know, and because he's the president director film, and he didn't do a Reagan film, which is, I don't know. You know, maybe it's a good thing he didn't, because he would have put whatever. And by the way, they cover everything. So they cover the Iran-Contra scandal too in here. Not that much, but they get into it. And it's kind of played out that he did know, you know. But all in all, really great movie, really informative, really interesting to find out a lot of things about somebody I knew nothing about. Yeah, so I like this movie. I'm going to give this movie 4 out of 5 stars. I know I've been giving a lot of films 4 out of 5 stars. I don't give it 5 out of 5 because it might have been a little bit too long. It might have told way too much about him when he was younger that you don't really necessarily need to know. And I don't like the structure of going through John Voight the KGB agent, to him telling the story, constantly going back to him. I could have done without that. It could have just been him in the opening and him in the end, just him telling the story. He could have been the narrator. I didn't mind that part, but it constantly cuts back to him in the present time, you know, and then, you know, he tells the whole story about what happened to Dutch. That's what they called Reagan too, Dutch. So yeah, that was his nickname. So I 4 out of 5. And also, it just the style-wise, it doesn't feel like. I guess I'm just as used to Oliver Stone. It doesn't feel like an Oliver Stone like movie, which it shouldn't. It's not him, and it's an independent film. So I guess it also feels cheaper because it is independent. But it's pretty great, actually. I really do like this movie, and I believe in any other time, if it was any other president that wasn't Ronald Reagan, I think this movie, Dennis Quaid would have been nominated for an Oscar for this. I don't think he will be nominated for an Oscar, but I do think he probably should. And I think Penelope Ann Miller sometimes was, like, wasn't that good in it at some parts. A lot of parts, when everything she's with Dennis Quaid is great, but I think there's like moments where she's yelling at people or talking to other people, and it just doesn't. She doesn't have that chemistry with them. But she has great chemistry with Dennis Quaid. Really, like you believe that they are Ronald Reagan and Nancy Reagan. Like it was that good. So yeah, if this movie's playing in selected theaters, I had to go pretty far to go watch this film. If you could find it, check it out. If it's available to stream or own, I'd recommend renting it or streaming it from whatever place is going to stream it. It was really good, honestly, and I guess educational or informative. But you know. It's up to you. Anyway, that's my review for the movie Reagan. If you like this video, hit that like button. Subscribe if you're new here. Share this with somebody who might be interested in the film. And I will talk to you guys next time. Peace.